friends, Jerry Rosa here in the Rosa String Works workshop, but we're on the dark side of the workshop this morning, and I have been making steady improvements to this side, trying to make it a little more airtight, even a little more secure perhaps for locking up and that sort of thing, but mostly just for airtight and be able to heat it better. One of the next things I've got to do is replace that door behind me. That door, I guarantee you, is older than me. This building is what you call stick built. It's not built from any kind of plans or any kind of dimensional lumber. It was all sawmill lumber. So there's nothing that's standard size in this. I thought about just ordering a pre-hung door, putting it in there. That's a 20-minute job and you're done. Well, the problem is these walls are much thicker than a pre-hung door. Yes, I know you can special order and all that, but even that doesn't completely explain the condition here. They have a threshold poured into the concrete here. So there's a metal threshold there poured into the concrete. So that I can't change. Well, I mean, I could. You could jackhammer it out. Bottom line is I'm not going to fight it. I'm just going to try to tear all this junk out that's here, put all new in, and I ordered a special order a door to fit this size hole. Hopefully I can make it all work. It's just not easy being me. Here we go. We'll see what happens. It occurred to me that after that little intro I gave you about this door that I didn't really tell you why I need to replace the door, other than the fact that I'm trying to make things more airtight. But this door is so loose, well, you can see daylight through it all the way around, down here on the corners, pretty much everywhere. But it's also been rebuilt several times. This is a piece of plywood to hold the door together. The other side of the door is busted out and, panels are missing. I mean, it's just a wreck. You could rebuild the door, but that would be almost as much work as putting in all new. And I'm also going to replace the trim around it with all PVC trim. That was actually more expensive, but it shouldn't rot. And I've used it in places where I've had rot around here before, and it's stopped the problem. And so at least I'm pretty sold on this stuff in terms of the longevity of it. I wouldn't necessarily put it on a mansion or something like that, something that you really want to be perfect. But for this kind of application, that PVC trim seems to be perfect. So anyway, that's where we're headed. I bought the PVC boards even so that they won't rot out, because these have rotted at the bottom and everything else. So anyway, first thing I'm going to do is hang a tarp on the outside of this, so when I tear this out, the cold air doesn't get in so easily. And it is pretty darn cold out there today. So I'll be out there hanging a tarp. I don't know how much of that you'll be able to see, but I'll leave the camera running for a minute here or so and see if you can see what's going on. Every time it rains, Lord, I run to my window. All I do is just wring my hands and moan. Those of you who know a little bit about general carpentry will get a kick out of this. Did you ever see such a large nail driven into a trim board? This was just a trim board around the door, and I swear to you, that nail, which is bigger than a standard 16 penny nail, was driven all the way through the trim. Much bigger, in fact. Just what you run into. Just a little memento from me, from my father, I guess you'd say. I don't know if that'll be where you can read that or not, but it's one of my dad's collar tags that he put on his dogs. He had lots of beagles. When I say lots, I don't mean one or two. I mean like lots of beagles, maybe 20, 30 at a time. And he would sell them, and for hunting dogs, he would take them out hunting and train them to hunt and that sort of thing. But anyway, what it says is, Rosa, if found, call 314-391-1865. My phone number from when I was a child. And of course, this was tacked up on the trim of the door there, just as a memento of my father. Just thought I'd tell you another invaluable tool is a cat's paw or a nail spoon. I've always heard it called a nail spoon, actually. A lot of people do call it a cat's paw. But this thing really is invaluable, especially when you've got really tight nails and things. I'm trying to get this trim board off, trying to pry it off, and there's nails driven into the end of the oak, and it just ain't having it. So I take the cat's paw, the nail spoon, you can drive it right in behind the nail and just lift them right out. So it's very helpful. So that thing is a very good tool. If you ever do much tear out, be sure you have one of these. I know the camera is kind of washing out due to this light coming through this tarp, so I'll stand here in front of the tarp to help a little bit. But when you get down to the bottom line and you're ripping out stuff, my dad always says, son, don't force it, get a bigger hammer. You know, when you're trying to move something and it won't move, you're working too hard if you're using a little tool. So get the big guns out, get you a big pry bar, you know, and get you some leverage when you get something that won't come out of there. And this board here is acting like it don't want to come out of there, so I just get out the big guns. And the big guns just move it, you know, you don't mess around with that stuff that don't want to move. It comes out of there then. Well, anyway, it's still a little stuck up at the top, but it's out of there. There's one more little nail holding it at the top. I can even stick this in there and just pry the whole thing loose, probably. Probably, but not on camera, of course. Yeah, it's coming off. And it's bringing the outside trim with it, too. The whole outside trim is coming. Well, like I said, it ain't easy pulling it out of this old wood. Some of this stuff is so hard, even after twisting it, it won't come loose. My goodness. Some of them nails don't want to turn loose at all. They didn't have enough nails in that. They probably could have used 3 or 4 more nails. Trying to contemplate how to build this door back in here. I have the new door just sitting in the hole. There is approximately 2 or so fingers width space between both sides, and which not quite a 2x4 space, but that'll give me room to, you know, put a 1x in there and then shim it out. But I think I ought to take up a little bit of that space with maybe a sheet with some plywood first. You know, take up maybe, I don't know, 1/4 inch of that or so with plywood, and then put the other stuff up there and use the wedges to wedge it into place. There's quite a bit of space. More space, I think, than I need. If there was 1 inch of space on each side, that would be about good, but there really is almost 2 inches of space on each side. Well, not really. There's 1 inch and 3/8 there, inch and almost 2 inches there. No, I'm sorry, 1.5 inches there. I'm reading it upside down. 1.5 inches there, 1 3/8 on this side. So it's a little bit much. If it was 1 inch on both sides or each side, that would be plenty. So maybe I'll put a piece of 3/4 plywood on one side to fill up the space. I'll do some calculating off camera here and figure that out. Same way up here. I've got a lot of space up at the top. More space up there even, I think. Of course, it's sitting right on the ground presently. 2 1/4 or more there. 2 on this end, so it's quite slanted also. Like I always say, I know you can't see me, it's dark, but like I always say, it's just not easy being me. But I'll figure it out. I'd say the most important factor about hanging doors is making sure everything is plumb, square, level, whatever you want to call it. It's way out on this frame. In other words, this side over here is, well, both sides are slanted to the camera is right. In other words, everything is slanted at the top that way. It's really bad, actually. So in 4 feet, there's 3/4 of an inch. And I would say nearly the same here, except the opposite way. Yeah, almost the same. So that's a lot. So I've got to take that into account. See, that extra width I think I have, I don't really have, because of the fact that the bottom's pushed in on this side, the top's pushed in on this side, so now that's the new square that you have to work within, but then you have to shim all that angle. So it's going to be difficult, but I'll figure it out.
That thunder roll, can't you hear that lonesome wind blow? So tell me, baby, now why you been gone so long? Tell me, baby, now why you been gone so long? You been gone so long now. Tell me, baby, now why you been gone so long? The wolf is scratching at my floor, Lord, Lord, and I can hear that lonesome.
Well, I thought I'd give you an update of how much fun I've had so far. I went ahead and put the same board back in here that came out of here, because it was in pretty good shape, actually. And it fit, I didn't have to cut it. Plus it's the right width, so it just was a no-brainer. I'm using it as just taking up space. But this was so out of plumb that, again, it's hard to film this because the sun, this is facing south and the sun is beating on this side, and there's just almost nothing I can do except block it out. But anyway, I had to wedge it a lot more down there than up here. And in addition, I had to twist it because the door jamb is twisted also. In other words, if you just put the board here flat, the board would be at an angle. It's hard to explain, but it would be angled like that instead of square and flat to the wall. So anyway, I also shimmed it that way. So that board there is as near perfect as you can get, and that's what I want. So I'm going to just go ahead and nail my plastic board up to that now, and that's what I'm going to hang my door off of. So here we go. As like everything on this project, nothing is square, straight, or anything. So like I said, they've already poured a threshold into this, so I basically stuck with using it because it's a big thing and it would be hard to tear out and redo. You could do it, but it would be a lot of work. So I'm stuck with using it. So what I'm doing is I'm tracing the bottom of this new plastic board to that threshold. And the way you trace that is you take a compass like this and you set your compass for the gap between the bottom of the board and the floor. And then you follow that floor up, and then it will put a pencil mark on there. I've already done that, but basically what it amounts to is just doing this. And I'll show you what the pencil mark looks like. So you can see the pencil mark here. And so that's what the bottom of the floor looks like. And I have to cut this profile in this board then. So I'll go do that now. With a wood shop like I have, there's at least a million ways I could cut this. But, why make it complicated? That ought to be real close. Let's see what happens. When you're checking the fit of something like this, it's generally easier just to put in the flat square side, put it in place, and then run the weird side over to where it needs to go. And that can vary. It could make more sense in other cases to do it the other way, but you need to think of which way works best for your situation. So that's just about as good as it gets right there. If it fit any better than that, it would be perfect, then it wouldn't look like I did it. So I'll just call that good enough right there. Well, I've hit a major snag. You can see over here, there's enough light behind my shim, even behind the shim boards and stuff, that you could throw a dog through there. If you can see how much light is coming through from the outside, that'll all have to be foam filled. And then it goes up to basically no light coming through it up here. Now what you're seeing there as light is between the door and the new board. It's basically tight. Over here, exactly opposite. The top is really wide. In fact, it's hugely wide. That's nearly 2 inches up there. You can see I put a bunch of shims in up there. And then when you come down here, it is basically nothing. Now, I honestly measured that and thought I would still have enough room to get my new white board in there. I don't. There's no way I can get a white board in there because it basically touches that concrete down there. So I have two options. One is to tear out everything I've done already, which is perfectly square and level, and I don't want to tear it out. Or cut away a bunch of this junk down here. And I'm going to at least first opt for that, which is not a good option because I got to tear out some of that concrete and everything else. But this hole is so out of plumb, something's got to give. And I just don't want to redo everything I've already done. And I think this will actually be easier to do it this way. I've got a fairly good size braking hammer that'll bust that out of there. It's not really a braking hammer, it's just a hammer drill, but it's one of those bigger ones. And I think I can bust that concrete out of there enough to, and then if I have to, even take a chainsaw or something to those boards and knock that back. That's what I'm going to try. Here we go. Oh well, here goes nothing. Gotta make sure I get it on hammer first. Yep, it's on just hammer.
So tell me, baby, now why you been going so long?
Well, so far it's knocking out of there fairly cleanly, fairly straight. So it's not too terrible. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of it off camera. I'll show you what it looks like when I get this all cleaned up. You know, I'll share another secret with you. If you're ever using one of these small hammer drills, now I'm not so sure it applies to the big rock breakers, but on this, I found that if you push really hard and you hold the trigger, it don't cut nearly as well as if you let up the pressure and let the bit do the thing back and forth. Let the pressure up and let the end of this thing do the bouncing more than pushing it into the rock. When you push it into the rock, it doesn't cut nearly as easily and it's much harder on you. So anyway, I was able to cut that off pretty flat, pretty straight really. Not that bad at all. I was afraid it was all going to bust out and be weird. But shoot, that's almost as good as it was. Not quite, but almost. Now I can get in here and get these nails out of here, and I think I can hack this out with an old chainsaw blade and cut this down. But anyway, to me that was quicker and easier. That only took about 5 minutes. I couldn't tear this out and put it back in there in 5 minutes, you know. This was much faster. And that's what I think I'll do here now, is I'll just cut this out, and I think we should be good to go. Once again, I know you can't really see this very well, but I've decided to try chiseling this before I try chainsawing it. Mainly because there's a lot of nails in this, and I've got just a couple of old junk chisels. I mean, these are junk. It doesn't really matter if I hit a nail. Have a feeling I'm going to end up just busting these chisels to pieces, but that's okay. Like I said, I don't care. Thought I could break it out from the side. That would have been faster, but no, that doesn't look like that's going to work. So I'll just have to work from the end here. It won't take me too long to chisel this out, maybe 10 minutes. I'll show you what it looks like once I get her chiseled out of there. For those of you who are purists, when I'm using this hammer, and you know you're not supposed to use a regular hammer with a chisel, you know, what I say is, you know, remember, everything is a hammer, especially a hammer. So I was using that, but then I got to thinking, some of you are probably screaming at the camera, so I went and officially got my mallet. Now this used to be a piece of firewood. Don't tell it though, because it thinks it's a mallet now. You can see I'm cutting off, oh, I don't know, right there, that ledge. I don't know if you can see that ledge. This is where the flat board is coming out this way, and that's 3/4 of an inch. So I'm cutting back quite a bit here. Whoop, I hit a nail there. I don't know why there would be a nail there. in the middle of nowhere, but I'll see if I can get it out of there. Like I said, I don't much care if I hit a nail with these chisels because they're just junk chisels in a scrap drawer. I save them just for projects like this. The thing about using a mallet versus a hammer really is you have a lot of mass here, weight, and when you swing it, you can swing hard and you don't have to be as worried about hitting your hand because the mallet catches the top of that pretty easily. I'll bring you back when I get some more done here. This is another one of those tools that if you don't have or not using, you need to get one. Trust me, if you do much of this kind of work, this thing's invaluable. Now, having said that, the blade that's in here is very fine and it's also used quite a bit. So I doubt it's going to cut this oak. I may have to go get a new blade, but I'm going to give it a shot because there's nails embedded in this, and if I can use this old blade and one last time, that would be good. Hitting a big nail right there, but I've got a big chunk blocked off there, I think. Great big nail there that I'm pretty sure I can break off with the hammer now and get it out of my way. Pretty large piece of nail there, and I can drive the rest of it back out of the way and then finish cutting this off, I hope. With a new blade, this thing cuts like butter, but this blade is really dull, fine tooth, and I knew I was going to hit nails and concrete, so I just decided to force it through there and, you know, send this thing on its merry way rather than waste a brand new blade, which they are expensive, but they're worth it when you get into these weird things like this that nothing else works. Okay, well, that might have made the difference. I don't know, I may have to come up higher and come down. This may still be too tight up in here, but down here I've moved it back quite a bit. So let's see how good we can do now. Well, perhaps you can see now it's a much better looking fit. It's still a little tight up in that one spot up in about right in here. So I think I'll chisel out a little bit more in here. From the doorknob to about there, it might need a little bit. I might just go get a skill saw or something and just, you know, put some stripes across there and then chisel them out. Something like that. But we're real close now. That only took about 15 minutes. That's a much faster fix than doing the other. So we'll move on and see what happens. Well, I doubt very many of you have had to deal with an opening that was more than 1.5 inches out of plumb, with a concrete that you had to knock out, and, you know, I don't know, resort to a chainsaw maybe to hang a door. Well, that's what I'm doing now. Here we go. Well, believe it or not, I don't think that's even the first time I've had to use a chainsaw to hang a door. I know it's not the first time I've had to break out concrete. And I'm fairly sure I've had doors that far out of plumb before too. So we're on the downhill slide now. I might have to knock out a little bit more right in here, maybe. I'll bring you back when I'm able to put the board in here, and I think that won't be very long. Well, I've got it pretty even. This board goes through there everywhere now, no problem. And so that means I should be able to make this work now. What I'm going to do, which might be unconventional, I don't know, I'm going to mark where the hinges go, and I'm going to route the hinges into the jamb here. And I'm actually going to hang the door and, you know, get it right. Then I'll build the rest of the trim out to the door, because that's the only way I can see making this work, as crooked as everything is. But I think it'll be just fine that way. It's going to hang perfect because this side here is perfect. And then we can just build everything to it. I'll bring you along for the ride as I make changes. Well, my friends, I did quite a bit of work on this door off camera till late in the evening. I have got the door hung. It is on hinges. It does open and it does close. What I did was I marked with the door sitting on that threshold, that metal threshold, I marked where the hinges went, and then I raised that all up by 1/8 of an inch. And it seems to clear the threshold okay. It might be dragging a hair. Probably should have gone another 1/16 of an inch up. But it's okay, I think. I think it's going to be fine. Now I've just got to go ahead and finish out the header above the door, which you can't really see in the photo there. But above the door there, you can see I don't have it boxed in yet. That's really crooked. It's much taller on that side over here than it is on this side over here. The gap is much bigger is what I mean. So I'm going to fit a piece up in there and get some wedges and stuff, and we'll see how that goes. So far this has really been kind of eating my lunch. I don't regret the fact that I've switched the way the door swings. Now it's going to swing up here against the air compressor and this little out of the way wall, and you can walk into the shop better rather than having to walk around the door to get into the shop. But the negatives are it is going to cover up the air compressor more, and we usually pull the line outside, which that could be a problem. And what I hadn't thought of is the light switches are on that side over here. So they're going to be behind the door. So I'm probably going to reroute at least the shop light switch to this other side. I don't know if I'm going to run the wire exposed or not. I don't much care in this shop. I know that's not normal code, you know, but I don't think I care about that, to be perfectly honest with you. Out here, there are no codes. I try to do things by code, though. I mean, I always do. But in this particular shop, I'm not as concerned about it. I would be very concerned in my house or someplace like that. But even here, I'll try to run it inside the wall if I can. If it poses much of a problem, then I'll just run it exposed. So anyway, I've got more work ahead of me.
Somebody said they thought they saw you rolling down in Reno with a big old man from San Antonio. They tell me I'm a fool to pine for you, but what did they know? So tell me, baby, now why you been gone so long? Tell me, baby, now why you been gone so long? You been gone so long now. Tell me, baby, now why you been gone so long? The wolf scratching at my door, Lord, Lord, and I can hear that lonesome wind moan. So tell me, baby, now why you been gone so long?
Well, I've got the top piece across there. It looks real good. I think everything is set where I need to have it set. Door swings pretty well. So I'm going to go around and fill in the gaps with the typical spray foam stuff. This is the new one that's supposed to be reusable. Of course, they charge a premium for that. But it did work. I'm kind of surprised. I was able to break off the little tip there and keep going. So at least it worked a moment ago. On camera, that's a different story. So here we go. I think that's going to work real well. On this side, because of these lock sets and things, I'm not going to put this in there yet because I've got to work over here yet, and I don't want to get this sticky junk all over me. So I've got those two edges sealed. It's already probably more airtight than it was. Well, since the last update, I've put the lock set in, and so I've got the door pushed that way. What I'm going to do now is I'm making the trim to go around this. I actually had to cut a piece of this PVC down. You can buy some of this PVC about this thick, but then I had to cut a ridge behind it, or a groove, so that this weather strip can fit in here. And so when you get done, you end up with a piece that looks like this with the weather strip on it. And I also beveled the corners so it looks nice. It looks just like a store-bought piece. But I went looking for a piece of this already pre-made, and I couldn't find it. You can find it in a whole kit, but I didn't need a whole kit. So anyway, I just made my own. Took a little bit of work, but now I'm ready to put it up here. I'm just test fitting it, and I push it up tight and kind of look to see that the foam is all compressed about the same. What I think I'm going to do too is put silicone on the back of this before I actually drive nails in it. So I don't know if I'm creating problems for myself or what. So I've got some 100% white silicone caulk, and I'm just going to put a bead of that right down the middle. I figure it'll help it glue if nothing else, because this stuff sticks to just about anything. Now I'm going to try to get it up here without making a giant mess, and you know how that silicone is, it gets over everything. It's nice, but then again it can create more problems than it fixes. Kind of helps glue it up there though, and I can see that the weather seal is making good contact and getting it straight. I'm just more or less doing this by eye. I'm not going to try to measure it and do all that, because the door may not be perfect either, and this way it'll all look real good and nice even seam. I'll show you the last thing. We'll do a close inspection of the whole thing when we're done. Well, my friends, it's the next day. I made more progress. I've got the trim back up. I used the same exact old trim that was there. That way it looks kind of like it's always been there, you know, and it's not good trim, it's beat up, you know, and all that, but this isn't a house. This is an old workshop, metal shop, in fact. Anyway, the door opens and closes just like a fine sports car door. I mean, it really does open perfectly, and it closes and latches, and there's absolutely no play in the door at all, which is perfect. You know, I changed the swing of the door. In other words, I moved it to the hinges to the other side. Because of that, the light switch is on the wrong side. Well, I drilled a hole here and I drilled a hole up there and dropped a line through there, and sure enough, it is a straight passage. I was afraid they would put a cross member in there and then I wouldn't be able to fish a wire down. So now I'm going to fish a new wire in here and move the light switch over to this side. So it shouldn't be that hard of a job to do. Just one more thing to make this a better job. I don't know if any of you watch Project Farm. He's a guy that reviews all kinds of things, tools and, you know, just different things, oils, everything. He settled on these EZ-Arc or EZ-Arc, EZ-ARC cutters for these oscillating tools. He said those were the best. I bought some of them based on his recommendation, and I'm going to give it a try right now. I hope it cuts. Well, oh my gosh. Well, my vote's still out on them. This is getting really hot, of course, and that's because it's got such fine teeth, and I'm sawing hard oak. I probably should have just went and got one that's made for cutting wood on this. There is some nails embedded in this, and that's why I thought I'd use this. It's carbide, and it's very fine teeth. Well, that came loose, and I had that really tight, so I don't know how that came loose, but we'll see. You know, probably not giving this a very fair test. Got that pretty tight, so we'll see if it holds this time.
Ain't nothing I'd rather do, so I think I'll just get started.
Well, it got the job done, but I ain't going to tell you that did that real well. You can see this has the really fine teeth on it, so that's probably 3/4 of the problem. You shouldn't really use fine teeth when you're cutting wood like this, but that's okay. It's done, and I'm happy with it. I think it'll just be fine. I see a lot of wasp nests down in there because this is old board and batten siding on the outside, and the wasp can crawl in behind the batten. There's a lot of wasp nests inside these walls. That's a black and white fact. Now, did I even make the hole big enough? I always err on the narrow side and I'll probably have to trim it out some more, but I'll eventually get it to work. I'll bring you back when I get a little further along. Well, my friends, I guess I'll conclude the video right here. It's basically finished. I might have a little bit of outdoor trim to work with yet. I moved the light over here, the light switch I mean. I did fish that down through the walls. Now this exposed wire is for an outlet that's over there, which I may rerun that later too. I'm cleaning up the whole shop, correcting a lot of errors and fixing air leaks everywhere, fixing windows, you know, just everything, just to kind of make this side of the shop a little bit better, easier to work in, especially in the wintertime or even in the summertime with the air conditioning. So anyway, it's finished. I couldn't be happier with the door itself. Like I said, it feels like a sports car shutting there. It just closes and you can tell it's airtight. For those of you who think, well, you just don't know how to hang a door, it took you that long and it was that hard, all I can say is I hung 22 doors one afternoon for my brother. So I know how to hang doors. I did that in one day. I say afternoon. It probably was a little bit more than an afternoon, but I hung 22 doors in a house for my brother one day while he was doing the other carpentry work. So I know how to hang a door. But when you have to hang a door in a situation like this old sawmill lumber, and as hard as it is, and the concrete, and etc. and so forth, you have to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, on every door. And that's what I did here. Now, I could have probably got away with putting just a can door in here, but the threshold would have been a problem. I would have had to rip the threshold off of the pre-hung door, which, you know, you're just paying a lot of money for all that stuff, and then you just get rid of it. I'm more than happy the way it turned out. Like I said, anytime anyone wants to come show me the right way to do something, I'll be happy to sit back and watch. So I hope you enjoyed this, a little look at some other kind of a project that I have to do here on the shop. It happens all the time, actually. I did several other honeydew projects this weekend as well. So, you know, it's just one of them deals. I should show you the reel mower that I just rebuilt. Maybe I'll show that in a future shop talk. But my wife inherited a lot of things from my father-in-law's estate, from her father's estate. And he had a lot of old antique stuff, and he had our old reel mower that was literally falling apart, and I put it all back together and made new parts for it on my lathe, etc. It works like brand new now, so maybe I should show that to you down the road, just to show you the kind of other projects that I end up doing here on the farm. Getting kind of long-winded, I apologize for that, but thanks for watching. If you haven't clicked the subscribe button, please do that, and tell your friends about the channel. I sure would appreciate it, and a thumbs up is always very helpful. Take care.